Hello everybody, this is Danny Mathematics, and today guys I want to go over example 1 and example 2 of how to add and subtract integers. Alright, and this is usually a middle school concept, but I know a lot of high schoolers are still adding and subtracting integers. Okay, now an integer is just a negative or positive whole number. Okay, so for example, 1 is an integer, -1 is an integer, 10 is an integer, -10 is an integer, 20 is an integer, -20 is an integer, and so forth, right? So, for example, let's go ahead and start off with example 1. I have a negative 342 minus a parentheses negative 408. Once again, I have a negative 342 minus a parentheses negative 408, right? Now, if you notice, guys, we have a negative number or a negative integer, and we're trying to subtract another negative integer, right? But if you notice, guys, I see two negative signs, which is one is the subtraction sign of the operation, which is the operation, and then the second negative sign is the sign that is associated with the second integer, okay? So I know this can get a little tricky, but here is something that you could do, okay? Whenever you're adding and subtracting integers, negative and positive whole numbers, always draw a tic-tac-toe. Okay? Draw a tic-tac-toe where the positive or plus signs are going in the diagonal and all other slots are the negative signs or the subtraction signs, right? Okay? So, whenever, ladies and gentlemen, you have two signs that are right by each other, then you need to do tic-tac-toe, okay? Like, for example, it says minus a negative 408. Okay, minusing a negative is just like adding a positive. And here's the reason why. For us to tic-tac-toe, if I have two negative signs, for us to tic-tac-toe, it's going to equal a positive. Okay? So that means that these two signs right here are going to cancel out, and I'm going to put a plus sign, okay, or a positive sign, all right? So once again, a negative and a negative, right, equals a positive. So I'm going to put a positive sign, okay? So now I just bring everything else down. So I still have a negative 342 plus, now I have a 408 plus 408, all right? So once again, I have a negative 342 plus 408, okay? Now, if you notice, guys, now I can see what I'm actually doing. Because at first, it was telling me that I was subtracting a negative, right? But that's confusing. Once again, I realized that subtracting a negative when I do tic-tac-toe is just like adding a positive, okay? Subtracting a negative just like adding a positive. So now, the next step we want to do is, guys, we want to circle the integers that we see along with their signs that are associated with them, okay? So for example, I have a negative 342. And I say a negative because it has a negative sign in front of it. Here, I have a positive 408, and I say positive because there's the positive sign in front of it, right? Now, the next step that I need for you to do, guys, is draw a chart. Just a small chart, 2 columns. One side is the negative side, and then the opposite side is the positive side, okay? Now, once again, in order for us to find out what side we're going to work on, here's what we need to do. We need to see which number would be bigger or which number is bigger if we drop the signs, okay? So if there was no positive sign and no negative sign, which one of these numbers will be bigger? If these numbers had no signs, this number right here, 408, would be bigger, right? Or the number that's furthest away from 0, okay? And as I look, the sign that's associated with this number is the positive sign. So that means that we have to work on the positive side, meaning that when we work it out, our answer is going to be a positive. Okay? So once again, the reason why we're working on the positive side is because if we drop the signs, 408 is bigger than 342, and the sign that's associated with 408 is the positive sign. All right, so that's why we got to work on the positive side. And all we're going to do is we're going to put 342 underneath. Now, ladies and gentlemen, there's two ways that you can look at it. If these two integers have the opposite signs associated with them, then we automatically subtract. Okay, we automatically subtract, or you can play tic-tac-toe. Once again, if we was looking at the middle row, okay, I have a negative number or a negative integer, and I have a positive integer, which means that for me to tic-tac-toe, I will have to subtract, okay? So that's two ways you can look at it. But I know that I need to subtract. So now, let's go ahead and subtract. 8 minus 2 is 6. I can't take away 4 from 0, so I'm gonna have to borrow from the 4 in the hundreds place and make that be 3, and then make 0 be 10. 10 minus 4 is 6, and 3 minus 3 is 0. So my answer, guys, would be a positive 66. My answer would be a positive 66, okay? Let's go ahead and go to example 2, the same thing. I have a positive 57 plus a negative 98. A positive 57 plus a negative 98. Now, it's real weird for us to be adding a negative. I'm adding, but I'm adding a negative integer or a negative number. I want to actually do the tic-tac-toe to see the true operation of what we're going to do. So once again, make sure that you have that tic-tac-toe. I drew one up here, but I'm going to draw another one. The plus signs going in the diagonal, and the negative signs are in every other slot. Okay, now I initially have an operation sign of addition, right? But I also have a negative sign that's associated with the second integer that is inside the parentheses, okay? This happens whenever you have a number inside the parentheses. Okay, so I gotta realize, or I gotta figure out a negative and a positive. If I play tic-tac-toe, what would it come out with? So a positive and a negative equals a negative. So in this particular case, guys, this positive sign and this negative sign are both going to cancel out, and then it's just going to turn into a negative sign or a subtraction sign, okay? So I'm just going to bring everything else down. I still have a 57, and I still have 98. So now I have 57 minus 98, right? Instead of us saying 57 plus a negative 98, it's just like saying 57 minus 98, okay? So now it's time to circle the numbers and the signs that are associated with them. There's no sign in front of 57, but if there's no sign in front of 57, then I automatically know that it's a positive, okay? So I have a positive 57, and I'm gonna associate this subtraction sign with 98, which is going to make it be its negative sign. So it's going to be a negative 98. So I have a positive 57 and a negative 98. So I'm going to do the chart. Once again, I got the negative and positive T-chart. Once again, if we were to drop the signs and none of these integers have signs in front of them, the biggest value would be 98. So 98 wins, okay? But as you notice, guys, 98 has a negative sign associated with it, so we have to work on the negative side of this chart. We have to work on the negative side of this particular chart. Okay, so I'm going to put 98 over here. I don't need the sign because we're already on the side of the sign. So I don't have to put the negative sign with 98 because we're already working on the negative side. But I also know that our answer, because we're on the negative side, our answer is going to equal a negative, okay? Now I'm going to put 58 underneath. Now remember, guys, if these two integers have opposite signs, we subtract. Or you can look at it like this. A positive and a negative, for us a tic-tac-toe, equals a negative, meaning that we have to subtract. So now let's subtract these two numbers. I got 8 minus 7, which is 1. And I got 9 minus 5, which is 4. So in this particular case, guys, our answer would be a negative 41. A negative 41, okay? Once again, this is example 1 and 2 of how to add and subtract integers.